All right, welcome to the video for section 9.3, day 2, solving quadratics by graphing and factoring. A little bit of a review today. So just a reminder, to solve a quadratic means to find the location of the x-intercepts on the graph. This means find the values of x that make the function equal to 0. And remember, there are two ways to do this. First way is to just look at the graph. And the places where the graph crosses the x-axis are called the solutions. Another way to solve a quadratic if you do not have a graph is to factor. And we'll say factor the equation. Then make each factor equal to 0 and solve. And down below we are going to practice both of these methods. Okay, so method 1 was solving by looking at a graph. And remember, these are the ones that were really easy. You want to find the spots where the graph hits the x-axis. So look at number 1. It looks like the graph hits the x-axis right here and right here. And what are those x values? Well, this one's at 1 and this one's at 2. So the zeros are the solutions are at 1 and 2. All right, number 2, same thing. Solve by looking at the graph. Where does the graph cross the x-axis? It looks like it crosses right here, and that is at x equals 4. So the solution is at 4. All right, now a quick recap on solving by factoring. Remember from the day before, to solve by factoring, first thing is it must equal 0. So we need to subtract the 12x to the other side of the wall. It has to equal 0 before we can factor. So let's go ahead and rewrite the problem. And we are going to subtract the 12x over so that it equals 0. And now we need to factor. First thing you want to try to look for is a GCF. And I see a nice GCF being 2x. So let's go ahead and divide everything by 2x. You get 1x squared plus 1x minus 6 equals 0. And let me get a new color. Now, the thing in the parentheses is a trinomial. We're going to try to factor this more by using a multiply-add table. So, we need to find two numbers that add to the middle, 1, multiply to the product of the first and last. So 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. So what are two numbers that multiply to negative 6 but add to 1? And you guys will find that that's 3 and negative 2. Now remember, you can plug them into the middle, or the shortcut is, if it's positive 3 and negative 2, then when you factor, when you write it as factors, it's x plus 3, x minus 2. Let's drop down the GCF of 2x, and let's drop down the equals 0. And now we will solve by setting each factor equal to 0. So 2x equals 0 when x equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0, you would subtract the 3 over. So at negative 3. And x minus 2 equals 0, when you would add the 2 over, x equals positive 2. Also remember the trick, it's always just opposite. So if the factor is x plus 3, the 0 is negative 3. If the factor is x minus 2, the 0 is positive 2. Now this one, you would just divide both sides by 2, and 0 divided by 2 is just 0. So the answer is just 0. All right, on to number 4. Same thing. Before we even think about solving, we need to set it equal to 0. Let me update this a little bit. Okay, so first thing you guys want to do is subtract the 27x over to the other side. Okay, so now we're looking at 3x cubed minus 27x equals 0. All right, now that it equals 0, let's look for a GCF. And what can we pull out of both of these? Looks like a good GCF would be 3x. So let's go ahead and divide that out from each term. When you divide out a 3x, you're left with 1x squared minus 9. And then again, let's try to factor further. Now this, it's not a trinomial, it's a binomial. And it's the difference of two perfect squares. So how do we factor that? Well, x squared is a perfect square of x. And 9 is a perfect square of 3. And if you guys remember the difference of two perfect squares pattern, it's one plus the other, one minus the other. So it's x plus 3 and it's x minus 3. That's how you factor the difference of two perfect squares. All right, let's drop down the GCF of 3x and let's drop down the GCF equals 0. And now we solve. Set this equal to 0 and solve. Set this equal to 0 and solve. Set this equal to 0 and solve. All right, well, 0 divided by 3 is just 0. So this one's just 0. This one you would minus the 3 over, so you get the opposite of negative 3. This one you would add the 3 over, so you get the opposite of positive 3. And those are your three solutions: 0, negative 3, and positive 3. All right, flip it over. One last thing for today. We're going to learn how to solve by using the graphing calculator. Okay, so just like before, very first thing you guys have to do, let me try to zoom in a little bit here. Very first thing you have to do is get it set equal to 0. So we are definitely going to need to subtract the 12x to the other side. Okay, so what we're working with is 2x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x equals 0. Since we're going to use the graphing calculator, this is what you guys are going to type in. So when you're ready, let's type this into our graphing calculator. Let me get mine. Okay, so remember, go to y equals, and let's type this in. 2x cubed plus, make sure you get out of that, 2x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x. And let me show you guys my window. If we go to window, my window is -551, -5511. Change it if you want. You don't have to. But if you want to see exactly what I'm going to see, you might want to change it to that. When you're ready, hit graph. And here is our graph. It's a little bit cut off on the top and bottom, but all we need are the zeros, the x-intercepts, where the graph crosses the x-axis. Can you guys find those points? Here, here, and here. All right, what are they? And those are your solutions. So this one looks like it's at -3. This one looks like it's at 0. And this one looks like it's at +2. So those are your solutions: -3, 0, +2. Let's write them down, and we are actually done with this one. So the zeros are, what do we say, -3, 0, and +2. Okay, 2 examples and then we are done. So number 1, it's already set equal to 0, so you guys are ready to just type this right in. So let's go ahead and type it in. So we'll go to y equals. Let's clear what we have and let's type this one in. 3x squared minus 6x plus 7. And when you're ready, hit graph. And we're looking for, where does the parabola hit the x-axis? And you guys are probably like, wait a second, we have a floater, it's up here. Is it ever cross? If it's facing up and it's up here, it's never going to cross, which means there are no solutions. This one actually has no zeros. If it never crosses, no solution. And we're done. Okay, number 2, last one. This one has some. Before you do anything again, you have to have it equal to 0. So let's draw our wall, and we're going to subtract the 8x to the other side. So what we're dealing with is 6x cubed minus 7x squared minus 8x equals 0. Only once you have it equal to 0 can we think about graphing. So we're going to graph this guy right here. All right, when you're ready, let's type it into the graphing calculator and let's try to find our zeros. I'm going to slide it over here. All right, let's go ahead and type that into y equals. So we're going to clear. We have 6x cubed minus 7x squared minus 8x. Hit graph, and let's look for the spots where it equals 0. Okay, so this one we have a little bit of an issue. It's not 0, it's not -1, it's somewhere in between. So we're going to have to do it using the second trace button on the calculator. Okay, so everybody hit second trace, and then we're going to go to option 2, find the zeros. So let's do that. Second trace, option number 2 will find us the 0. Okay, now let's go to this 0 first. So you got to get this blinky thing to the left of this 0. So keep going left until it's past this first 0. Okay, so get it somewhere down here. Hit enter once. Now go to the right of this 0. So hit the right arrow so you're somewhere to the right or above it. And hit enter twice. All right, that's our first 0. It's a decimal. So our first answer is -0.71. -0.71. Okay, now we do the same thing over again for the one here. This one looks like it's right at 0, but let's just check to make sure. So second trace, option 2, 0. Okay, let's get our blinker somewhere just to the left of this one. Hit enter once. And then let's hit the right arrow so the blinker is just somewhere a little bit to the right of it. Hit enter twice. Okay, so that one was just at 0. All right, one more time for this last one. It looks like it's pretty close to 2, but not quite. So same thing again, second trace, option 2. Let's get this blinker just a little bit to the left of this last 0. So let's move it over so we can see it, and it's just a little bit to the left of this last 0. hit enter once, then hit the right arrow so it's a little bit to the right of it, a little bit above it. Hit enter twice. And our final zero is at 1.8. I'm going to round it up to 1.88. So 1.88. And those are how you find the zeros on a calculator. All right, thanks for watching. Tomorrow we will practice these in class.